Thanks very much. We were asked to give a title for this talk about 5 months ago. I think you've heard a few people here who are probably regretting the title that they gave 5 months ago. But I'm not. I am going to, wrong way. First of all, I'm going to talk about me, and then I'm going to talk about them, and then I'm going to talk about them. First about me. So I'm currently at Thomson Reuters, and I'll explain a little bit about Thomson Reuters. It's not Thomson as in Thomson Holidays. It's not holidays. You've probably heard of Reuters, a news agency. So Reuters is the smallest part of Thomson Reuters. So the bit you've heard of is the bit that's our kind of glossy front end that everyone's heard of, but actually doesn't make any of the money. Prior to that, I was at Orange. I was at 3, at Orange at 3, I ran the UX teams, and I was at BT before that. And ironically enough, I took my design team, my UX team, out to this very place 14 years ago. So the last time I was here was 14 years ago, as a kind of celebration. So it shows the kind of rock and roll kind of guy I am, that I take them here for a UX night out. And so I can say that this is the first time I've been here with trousers on, which I'll maybe explain later. Must learn which direction. So Thomson Reuters, the answer company. Almost certainly none of you will use or will ever use Thomson Reuters software because you're not accountants, bankers, and lawyers, probably. There's one part of it you might use, it's Reuters. So for instance, if you go to the Apple Store and download the wider image, which I recommend you do, it's a great photography, photojournalism app, which you'll thoroughly enjoy. But I'm not going to talk about that. What Thomson Reuters does is supply information to professionals, especially legal, accounting, and banking. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is them, because in actual fact, when I say designing for aliens, I'm actually talking about the mobile professional, by which I mean lawyers, bankers, and accountants. I came prior to this from the consumer world, and I did not, by the way, I joined Thomson Reuters 4 years ago, and I did not understand the degree to which I relied on my own life as a consumer to understand the end user. I use all sorts of UX, talking to the customer, but I did not understand the degree to which I was relying on my own consumer behaviors to function as a designer. And I really had a very tough time when I first joined Thomson Reuters. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that, in case any of you ever have to or are currently designing for the business professional. So I'm going to talk about, first of all, 4 serious challenges facing the mobile UX designer. They are scarcity, understanding, simplification, and empathy. It was really nice to hear empathy mentioned in the last talk. I'm going to talk about that at the end. On scarcity, the elusive user. I have been brought up as a user-centered designer throughout my own career, and when I trained as a designer at Glasgow School of Art. Talk to the user, understand the user. I have a kind of Scottish democratic approach to design. If everyone around you, the real people, they are the ones that will give you the answer. Kind of Robert Burns' approach to design. But the problem with business professionals is they're incredibly hard to find. You can't really ring someone up and say, I need 10 accountants by Monday night, and we're going to give them some wine and we're going to talk through some stuff. First of all, you won't find them. Second, they won't drink your wine. It's not good enough. Third, they won't accept your incentive. It's not enough money. You cannot pay them enough money to make it worth their while to sit and look at what you're doing. They're hard to pin down. They will cancel at the drop of a hat. Again, I have been through the process of getting 20 people ready to interview them, and then they all cancel. I wish I had 3. So they're really hard to pin down because they have very busy lives, and their requirements to drag them to do something that's part of their life is going to take them away from the thing you need. They're very hard to observe. A lot of the places they work are locked down. You cannot go into a legal environment and say, could I observe you, or a banking environment. You can't go into an FX trader room and ask to watch them make money. You can't do it. They won't let you in. I've got around that sometimes by doing telephone interviews, which is kind of like, almost the worst thing you can do, but actually better than not talking to them at all. And I remember on one occasion I talked to one guy and I said, look, I think he was a very senior banker in HSBC and in capital markets, which is they're dealing with they're dealing with people that are financing dams and bridges. So this is huge monies. And I said, do you mind if I record the interview, when I'm talking to you? And he said, sure, as long as you don't mind that I'll be recording you as well. Because all of these people are recorded all the time. Their telephone calls are recorded so that they cannot be, so if they are guilty of insider trading, for instance, they will be prosecuted. So it's the first time I've ever been recorded back. They're hard to understand and very coy about giving feedback. So talking to an FX trader about how they make money with their tools is a bit like asking, your local Italian ice cream maker what the secret ingredients is in their ice cream. They're not going to tell you. They're not going to show you the magic that they do. In fact, a lot of our tools allow you to import your own algorithms, connect our software to your algorithm so you never have to reveal your secret algorithm to our system. So actually asking someone how they work, they won't answer you. No matter how much you convince them, you won't get them to tell you. They'll be very vague about what exactly it is they're doing. And I'm not going to give you all the answers to this because actually I don't know all the answers to this. I'm just describing a problem space. So actually finding the user and getting to talk to them, number one problem. And actually one of the things I've done is I go to conferences where they will be. So I'm a kind of conference stalker. And so I'll go to an accountancy conference. I'm going to an accountancy conference tomorrow. I'm flying to Vegas tomorrow where I'm going to stalk accountants. Old accountants as well. I'll share stories when I get back if anyone's interested. So understanding the user and then retaining that information. So does anyone know what MACD is? When I first heard that, I thought it was McDonald's. I thought it was the ticker. You probably know that when shares, they have a short version. I thought MACD was the short version of McDonald's. It's not. I'll tell you what it is in a minute. Does anyone know what opinion vacated by means? No? I met a lot of people where opinion has clearly vacated from, but I've never been quite sure what it means. And does anyone know what brackets mean in accounting? Have you got a number with brackets around it? Okay. Negative, yes. Actually, it's not quite as simple as that, but yes. But when you first see it, you're thinking, why isn't there a negative? Why are they doing this? So to actually understand this, the domain, and then retain it for any longer than a week is the challenge, at least for me. So MACD is moving average convergence divergence. Did that help? I'm not going to explain it to you because I don't understand it. Or I did, sorry, but I've not retained it. And this is the MACD for MACD. So that's McDonald's MACD there. Okay. We'll be talking about it later, I'm sure. How about opinion vacated by? So opinion, this is on the legal side. A vacated judgment makes a previous legal judgment legally void. So the reason why this is important is that, for instance, we're doing all of the US law is in our database. All of the cases and their interconnections are in our databases. And the connections between those cases are the judges passing comment on those cases. And those comments are graded into the type of things that they say. So they might say, I'm not following this, or I read that, but it makes no difference to me, or I read it and it's wrong. So there's a kind of terminology around the meaning between the connections. So when we're trying to build user interfaces on top of that database, we have to try and understand what the meaning of these sentences is so that we can construct a visualization of it. And one of the things that I would certainly advise if you're working in the B2B environment, and I work across legal, banking, and accountancy, is it's very difficult to hard swap hard jump between projects. So you can't do a legal project in the morning and an accountancy project in the afternoon, because you have to kind of reset your understanding of their world for much longer than you would probably normally do for any project you're working on. So the gentleman was mostly correct about. Oh, you can't read it. Sorry, I'll get away with contradicting you then. So no, I think you're mostly right, but I think there are a couple of cases where it doesn't mean that. But again, so you can look at a user interface and not actually understand how those individuals are reading it, and it's extremely difficult to get that knowledge. It's quite arcane. It's quite difficult to get without going through a very long series of training. To understand a lawyer, do you have to be a lawyer? No, you don't, but you probably have to put an awful lot of effort into understanding the legal environment. Watching Damages, the first 3 series, was not going to answer all of your questions. By the way, what I will say is that when you're working with bankers, lawyers, and accountants, there's a lot of movies about bankers, Wall Street, The Big Short, and so on. There's a lot of movies about lawyers, although mostly criminal law, not so much, people selling houses, for instance, or doing wills. There's none really with accountants. So I'm delighted to say there's now a movie out right now called The Accountant, and I will be going to see it so I can understand their world more. Or that will be the excuse when I put it in for expenses, anyway. So the next challenge is simplification. So these are professionals. They use these are tools that are used by professionals, not by consumers. So it's a little bit like making mobile versions of Photoshop. The legal products are highly textual, very few images, if at all. If there's an image in a legal document, it's gratuitous, no matter how much, Well, there's maybe a picture of a lawyer. That's it. Tax products, highly numeric and textual, and very complex labeling. Trying to get complex labeling down into short versions, extremely difficult. Financial products, highly numeric, complex labeling, and lots of charts, and charts that you can manipulate. Again, getting those down into small sizes, very tricky. Plus, I would argue that simplification needs a deep understanding. It's extremely difficult to simplify something if you don't understand it in the first place. And this is an example of something we worked on. This is Thomson One Anywhere. So this is software. This is existing software, desktop software. It's Thomson One Anywhere is a product used by wealth management consultants. So if you are so rich that you outsource the management of your money to someone else, and I see a few people nodding out there, then you will be dealing with a wealth manager. So a wealth manager will look after your money for you, and you'll meet with them every 6 months in your penthouse or in a coffee shop, and they will take you through what they've done with your money and why it's grown and so on and so forth. So they said, well, we need an iPad version of this. We've got to get mobile. You're going to help us. And I'm not going to go through the entire process for this. All I'm going to say is that every time we said, well, we don't think you need this, they'll say, no, we definitely need that value. We need that column. Definitely, we've got so much, we're asking for this column. And after about 6 months of working on this, they said, now we want a smartphone version. This is all responsive web, by the way. So we built them we also constructed or designed a smartphone version, thinking they'll never use it. They'll never use it. And kind of the end results of what we worked on. And in fact, the one on the right, your right, the smartphone version, is by far the most used of the versions that we created, by far the most used. And we still can't believe the degree or the degree to which it's used in comparison to the iPad, when the iPad is so much more, so much richer and easier to use, simply because they more or less have the same amount of data in them. One other interesting thing about these is that normally when you're building apps which have numbers in it, you might eventually say, well, we'll kind of round off at 10,000, we won't go above 10,000, but you're doing a wealth management app for someone. We said, what is the maximum number of digits that we'd have to have? And they say, well, we'll go for 1 billion. Because if they've got more than 1 billion, we'll build them an app. So we'd round it off at 1 billion. And I have to say also, this is another screen from it, which is a screen about options. Now, I worked on this design with my team. I do not understand options. And I've been taken through about 6 or 7 times by experts in this area, and I still don't understand everything about options. And yet I still had to design, I had to work on the page. What I can also say to you is that no one in the team, no one in the product team understands fully the options page. And one of the reasons is because as soon as you understand the options page, you will no longer be a product manager. You will leave the company and you will make a lot of money making use of the options page. So it's this bizarre world where anyone that graduates to the point of understanding will leave and you'll never speak to them again as they drive past in one of the cars that they bought on that boat. The last challenge, certainly for me, and I don't know if everyone agrees, but the last challenge is empathy. So I'm the kind of designer that needs to love you to actually work well. In order for me to produce any good design work, I actually have to feel like I care about you in some way. And I think that's relatively common amongst designers. I think I've heard it mentioned, they can actually feel like I could be that person, or I like that person. And my customers are bankers. I'm slightly characterizing them a little bit. Lawyers, and accountants. I couldn't find any great pictures of accountants. Those are the best ones I could find. So the first project I had at Thomson Reuters was a mobile user interface, an iPad user interface for mergers and acquisition lawyers. So those are the people that go around, they identify companies, they say, we'll bring them together, we'll cut that bit off, we'll make them redundant, we'll sell that bit, and I'll make a lot of money out of it. So my job was to help them. And I found it quite challenging to generate the empathy, because I think it's fairly close to the kind of arms dealer end of user interface. I hope this isn't being recorded or anything. But I did develop it. I've got a lot of empathy for them now. First of all, there's a number of ways I've managed to do it. Actually, watching movies helps, funny enough. Even if it's not telling you about the reality of their lives, you just kind of end up hanging out with them in this kind of second-hand way. Going to conferences and seeing them fumble, seeing the bad suits they wear at conferences really helps, because you suddenly think, wow, they made bad choices. I could help them. So I've found I really now do empathize with them. But if anyone's seen the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it may just be that I've become one of them or a bit too much like them. So maybe that's the reason why I empathize with them. And that's my one concern, that I've been so keen to make sure I can live and work in this world that maybe I've just become a little bit too much like them. I was being driven across London last week by a UX person, a design person. I was explaining to them the work, which I'm going to touch on briefly, which we're doing in a thing called KYC, which is Know Your Customer, which is if you go to a bank and you say, I want you to open a bank account, and they never say, here you are, instantly, and give you your card. They will say, we'll process it, we'll get back to you tomorrow, and then you'll get your card. That's because they go away and they check to make sure you're not a money launderer or a terrorist, or you're dealing with someone that is dealing with North Korea. They're just not allowed to do it. And what they do is they go to a database and they look your name up to see if you are one of those people. And I work on that project. And I was explaining this to the UX person, and they looked at me like I was, the CIA, or like I was some kind of super. So I was feeling really proud of the design work, and they were horrified, nearly crashed the car. And I'm looking now to see if I'm getting empathy back or if I'm getting suspicion. I think I'm getting a bit of empathy. So the next thing I want to talk about is them. So we're going to change a little bit now, because I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence, design with artificial intelligence. I don't know if anyone's seen the movie Them. It's an old movie. It's about giant ants caused by nuclear fallout, I think. Look it up. It's great. So Thomson Reuters has recently invested heavily in cognitive computing, which is the non-scary name for artificial intelligence. We're not allowed to call it artificial intelligence because apparently it unsettles people. And so we're doing, so we're working with IBM, so spending a lot of money with IBM. You probably came down here first class on a train, and it's probably because of the project that we're doing together.
Eating caviar all the way.
Yes, absolutely. So you can thank me later.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So they're really focusing on cognitive computing, and I sit near a group of natural language processing people who are part of that group. So some challenges in designing user experience for cognitive computing. This is not specifically for mobile, incidentally. And they didn't know how to talk to me in a way that would allow me to help them. Second point I want to make is who is making the decision. So I was describing this know your customer system that I'm working on. So basically, if I am trying to find out I'd love to give you a bank account, but I need to make sure that you're not a money launderer, or I will be prosecuted by the government. So I need to go through due diligence to make sure that you are who you say you are, and I can, give you your credit card and your debit card and so on. So one of the things is we have a way of, the software will review to see if the person that you are is the same person as this prescribed individual online. And it will use a number of ways to make a decision about whether you're the same person. So it will say, this Andrew McGrath is not that money launderer from Pennsylvania, right? And it will basically base the idea that, well, I don't live in Pennsylvania, I've never been there. So there's a number of things that we'll use to decide that I am not that money launderer. It will also check the web on my behalf and find information about people called Andrew McGrath and what they have done. This is when you're all getting a bit freaked out now, right? So, and at the moment, that system can only say, I have found something on a web page that is highly likely to be negative, and it appears to be about this person. It's not allowed to say this person is a risk. The responsibility for making the decision has to rest on an operator. So it's kind of like it's actually 99.9% certain that this person is definitely okay to have a bank account, but an individual has to make that final decision. So the cognitive computer is not legally responsible yet. The cognitive computer also comes up with conclusions that are not it's not right for it to share. It actually has come to a conclusion that this person is not someone you should be dealing with professionally. But that system, you cannot allow that system to reveal that in public. It cannot reveal that to the end user. And the other thing that comes out of working with these systems is that people become obsessed. As soon as they think it's a cognitive computer, they become obsessed with knowing why it's made that decision. They don't accept it, except the sat-nav scenario where you accept that this is the best route to take and you'll just follow it. As soon as you're asking questions about which investment should I make, why should I not do business with this person, people become obsessed with understanding the reasoning and the rationale. They want to have a dialogue with the cognitive computer about why it made that decision. And those areas which I think there is no, those are the kind of fascinating areas from the user interface side, from this kind of cognitive computing area. I understand I have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to go very quickly. I'm going to talk about Convene, which is an app that we work on. Thomson Reuters does a lot of conferences. That's why I'm going to Vegas. We have an app. We give it to the event. People use the app to navigate the event. And I'm working with Sasha, who's an intern from City University, we're using artificial intelligence in systems to try and matchmake between people. So to say, well, you're both at this event. You should talk to each other. And we've got, at an event, you've got attendees, speakers, and of course you've got sessions. People want to meet sessions. They want to hang out, they want to be in sessions because it's got content they're interested in. They want to meet like-minded people in that session. Some people want to network because they want to do business. Some people want to network because they want to get a new job, and so on and so forth. So you've got lots of kind of interesting competing needs. So we start off this process by doing semi-structured interviews. We built some personas. We've got the open network, the discrete networker, and the speaker, just 3 of the examples of the personas we've put together as this project's going on. we're now, and this is the core part, which is we're trying to use natural language processing to understand which style of communication you like based on your LinkedIn profile. So it'll read your LinkedIn profile, try and understand what type of person you are into 2 categories, and then give you a recommendation in a language which is more likely for you to accept it. So in other words, if you are data-driven, it will give you an explanation which is more data-centric. And if you're more kind of emotionally driven, then it will give you language in a more emotional sense. And we're using machine learning to read the LinkedIn page, consented, and then and actually then make that matchmaking. And we're in the middle of this, by the way, so I haven't got conclusions. I've got some conclusions. So we're in this data collection right now. So what we're doing is we are asking individuals to fill in these questionnaires, and then we check the result from their questionnaire against their LinkedIn profile to see if the computer agrees that the type of person you say you are is the same as your language would appear to suggest on your LinkedIn page. So the two are need for effect, which is important to know what others are feeling, and need for cognition. So that's the kind of split we're looking for, and we're going to then use that. And we have about 100 people who have done this already. Now, if you're from the kind of qualitative data type person, you think, oh, you need 12, 13, 14 people. If you're in the data science side, you need 300, 400 people. There's another kind of hard difference between these two worlds. And just so far, and again, this kind of amazes me when this happens, this chart on the left shows that the language on LinkedIn deciding if you're a data-driven person. So we checked if you're a data-driven person from your questionnaire, and then we checked based on your language on LinkedIn, and that's the answer, which is broadly the language can indicate if that's the type of person you are. On the more emotional side, it's not quite so clear-cut, but then again, our numbers are quite low on that side. And so we're in the process of developing this model, which would then allow us to do that. So we need 500 participants. I have 100 so far. Can you guess what's coming next? And we need more diversity. It's all like Thomson Reuters employees and their friends, and City University, because this is for Sasha's degree. So we want more professions, nationalities, ages, etc. They must have a LinkedIn account with a summary completed at least. And there's a URL. Actually, what I'll do is I'll put it up here. So if you participate, the person who wins it, we will draw that out of the hat, someone who will get £150 worth of Amazon vouchers. It can't be a Thomson Reuters employee or their family, so I'm ruled out. Help Sasha get her degree. That's the URL. Please do so. I think I've got to finish. Thank you very much for listening. Sorry I went on for too long.